Oh, right. Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. Yeah, I was just noticing something. I think I'm for some reason logged. I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm here. It doesn't matter what's going on, who I'm logged in as or is what. But yeah, welcome, guys. Russ, what's going on with you today?
So
smooth.
That was smooth. First thing, I saw this in the Miami Herald, and I really got angry. The Miami Dolphins played against the Patriots last week, and one of the guys from the Dolphins was quoted as saying, after he had tackled Tom Brady, one of the referees went up to him and say, "Hey, take it easy on Tom." And you know what? That's bullshit, because this is the NFL.
Hard life, Russ.
You have defensive players. I'm mad about it because nobody else in that league gets treatment like that. Yes, there are rules that protect the quarterback to some degree, but Eagles fans know for a fact that they've seen Carson Wentz get hit a million times. I can no longer look at Tom Brady and say, "Oh, this is amazing. He's playing in the league at 40-something years old," because he's playing in a bubble. You can't do anything to him anymore. And to illustrate that point, Jamal Adams for the Jets yesterday got fined like $24,000. He didn't hit a quarterback in the head. He didn't hit him in the knees. He hit him in the chest area, and he got fined $24,000. And he basically said the same thing I just said, and he's right. I mean, in the old days, in the NHL, did they protect Gretzky? His teammates did, but the league didn't necessarily protect him. This is an entire league protecting one guy, and it's a bad look.
I think one thing is, Russ, they didn't want a arena football league team to hurt Brady. If it's an NFL team, they probably wouldn't have a problem with it. I don't know. I mean, I'm not an apologist for Brady or anything, but I don't put a lot of stock in this story. I think it's,
if you played, you would, trust me.
Yeah, well, sure. And if all
and that's not like I played. I mean, the current players. That's what I mean.
If he gets a fingernail laid on him and they call a 15-yard penalty, then I'd be more apt to believe that they're protecting him. But I don't think the NFL is protecting Brady. I think I was talking about this on the radio this morning, and the fact that I'm surprised that it wasn't a CBS executive that didn't come out and say that to the Miami player, because they've lost Roethlisberger, they've lost Nick Foles. So now you have
happens, man.
Now you have Gardner Minshew and Mason Rudolph as your main attractions for Sunday afternoon at 1 p.m.
Mason Rudolph has like the greatest game of his life. You don't know, and that's why you watch.
Well, you won't know until after it happens because nobody's watching.
Well, that's not true. Steelers fans will watch, but word gets out.
Well, that's nobody. No, I just wanted to touch on this because Mike Francesa has been a very prominent radio host in New York for decades, but his hold first of all, his hold on New York radio is slipping. He's now number 2 behind another show in the ratings for afternoon sports talk, and he's always had this thing about talking truth to power, but it got to the point where the New York Giants head coach, who was making a weekly appearance on the show, basically they pulled the show after he said that the team was terrible, that other than this and that, your team sucks. They pulled him, and the coach of the team will no longer be on WFAN. Russ, this is just a sign that this station, this once great bastion of sports talk, is now crap.
Yeah, I mean, it was either the first or the second. I think there may have been one in Seattle that went on a day before these guys did, but they were the first, 24-hour. There was a guy named Art Rush Jr. that did it in New York, but they didn't have a full station 24 hours. So this is, still the pioneer. But what's happened here is, and Shermer really opened the curtain on this one. He said he was never getting paid, and there's no contract for this show.
Right.
The Giants decided that they would do it because they have a good relationship with the station. And now the Giants pulled it and said, we don't want to do it anymore. Now, from a perspective of WFAN, not only did you tick off the team, and now you've probably ticked them off to the point where next year they're going to probably want to be on a different station.
Right.
And that is a loss in this radio world. And that's where, Francesa is really going to, this is probably the last year.
And that's why, like his competition, they have Adam Gase and they have Darnold on. So it was like Giants for one, Jets for the other. Now it could be both of them on the same station. And
it could be.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't think of anything more boring than just listening to people talk about sports, or just watching them. Watching them or listening to them talk about sports. So let's get to hockey. Okay, here we go. Hello, Hockey World. It is Thursday, September 19th, 2019.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Peter Tessier in sunny Winnipeg.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I am Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. I got my voice about 80% back.
You pissed off Frank there, Peter. He's looking for balmy.
It's not balmy, Frank. It's not balmy.
Not balmy.
Come on, Pete.
Who wants balmy? It's actually nice and chilly. It's a real good fall day here where we are.
It's supposed to be 31 here tomorrow.
Oh no, it's 70
Celsius.
here. It's 70 in my neighborhood, and tomorrow I'll be back in the 80s. So
last night it was when I got this morning to take my kids to school. It was 56. I was like, wow,
at night now the temperature's dropping like the fall, but not during the day.
that's wonderful stuff.
Yes, that's good stuff.
We didn't have Peter on the show yesterday, so I wanted to lead off with this because the Winnipeg stuff yesterday just dominated the first half of our show. And I mean, Peter and Russ gave you, an attribution for this because you sort of called it when you guys talked about Byfuglien when the news came out about a leave of absence. You said, well, this could be he's just lost his passion for the game, and that came out from Bob McKenzie and then later Rick Ralph from TSN, who said, yeah, I mean, he's just this just may be it because he's not feeling it. And that puts the Jets in a really tough predicament.
It does. So from the point of rostering a team, you've arguably lost the most important piece that you've had in terms of the team and its identity and locker room and everything in Dustin Byfuglien. And that's no slight to former Thrashers Brian Little and brief Thrasher Blake Wheeler is now the captain. That's just who Buff is.
Yeah.
But it's also the fact that, he's a polarizing guy for a lot of reasons, simply because, he's like, in some ways, he's kind of like the defense version of Mario Lemieux, not in terms of raw talent, but he makes this look super, like, it looks like he's not trying, right? He's so big and just moves around, but he's dynamic. When he's on the ice, the game changes. It's just that simple. And in the 31 Thoughts today, Elliot Friedman brought something up that I don't think many had really considered, is his ankle injury last year. And this is why Friedman is sort of bringing, he's bringing the goods on some things in perspective, and he really takes his time before he puts this stuff out. But, if it's not 100%, you might go into camp. And remember, Byfuglien didn't play a minute in the Beauty League this summer. Didn't go, and he's always played in the past. Didn't do anything. And if that was bugging him, and now you come in and it hasn't healed, you go into physical and you say, guys, it's not right. I need some time to think about this, because if it's not, you might be waiting on some medical stuff. You might be saying, if it's not coming back and I need 2 to 3 months, I don't know if I want to start up in 3 months. And we know what that's like. And I think Elliot referenced Scott Niedermayer when he sat out and the Ducks suspended him and they welcomed him back. But it can change, right? It can change really quick for guys. There's 34. Just imagine the target Byfuglien has on him every time he's on the ice. And also, let's not forget, last year it was, who was it? The huge kid who used to be on the Stars. He's now on the Penguins.
Yeah. Jimmy Alexiak, wasn't it?
Alexiak. Yeah. Corked Byfuglien, and he got up and wobbled to the bench, falling down. I mean, it's little things like that eventually take your toll. You're a target when you're that size, particularly when you've been doing that to guys most of your career. Yeah. And eventually it catches up. Yeah. I don't blame him. The guys made a lot of money.
Have you ever had a chance to talk to him face to face? Like,
yes.
He's an interesting one, isn't he? Like, he's definitely.
I have. I
have too. I mean, he's a very interesting character. He doesn't look like he trusts you when you're talking to him.
I think he's just suspicious because he never wants. I think he's so genuine as a person that he would never want anyone to think he's not who he is.
Yeah, I get that too, and he also is very honest.
Very honest,
very honest and like brutally honest, but very reserved in the way he talks.
Yeah,
very calculated. Takes a long time to think, but completely like barely honest. Like I'll never. My favorite interview with him that I ever got to do was right before the was media day, the 2010 Stanley Cup Finals with the Blackhawks and Flyers. And if you remember in that run, he was scoring like crazy for the Blackhawks as a forward. He was having a great time, and it was weird because the way media day works is there's a table with every player set up around a big room, and so there's a lot of time you can talk to these guys, and it's really nice. And there's also times when certain players aren't being talked to at all. And Nick Byfuglien was one of those guys that just wasn't being talked to. I mean, you got all these other big Blackhawks guys out there. So I went over and started talking to him, and really just kind of like shooting the breeze a little bit. Like I wanted to know, I asked him the basic first question I asked him was, I mean, what do you think about playing offense? I mean, he's like, no, I'm a defenseman. He said flat out to me, and I'm like, well, you're doing a pretty good job at offense right now. You're scoring goals, and you guys are in the Stanley Cup Finals. He's like, yeah, but I don't like it. And he was just, this is like a guy who's in the Stanley Cup Finals scoring goals, and flat out would just tell you right out he didn't want to play offense, for the Blackhawks at that time. And it was kind of fascinating. It was very eye-opening because he did not look excited to be in the Stanley Cup Finals, really. Like, he didn't have that passion that most of the guys have when they're in that media day. Like, that media day is a fun time to talk to guys because they're really, I mean, what better thing, can you ask for? They just got their new sweatshirts, and everything, and they're like, they're sitting there and they're ready to go, the Stanley Cup Finals.
Well, I mean, the thing is here, and I mean, I would assume that there is some sort of reserve list that they could place him on if he decides that he needs to continue the league of absence. I mean, they can't put him on injured reserve unless he failed the physical or something of that nature. If he doesn't want to retire, he'd have to submit his retirement papers for them to take his $7.6 million salary off the cap. So, I mean, they're in a situation here, and Pierre LeBrun yesterday mentioned Falk and Ristolainen as two names out there. And the thing is that what happened this morning in Buffalo, Brandon Montour apparently broke his hand in a preseason game. He's going to be out at least the remainder of the preseason, and it sounds like into the regular season. Yeah. So now that means Henry Jokiharju was probably going to make the Sabres. Ristolainen probably won't go anywhere for at least a little while, but I don't think he would have gone anywhere until probably Thanksgiving because I don't think his value has been elevated. But I don't think Winnipeg is going to make a deal for a defenseman until they know what Buff wants to do.
They're not going to do anything. And the best news was Ville Heinola played last night in Winnipeg against the Wild, and he looked capable, with NHLers. And I believe Judy Owen has some, she's an Associated Press up here in Winnipeg. She had some really great quotes from the Minnesota players who were playing last night. And yes, they didn't have a particularly strong veteran lineup, but and even with the Jets prospects, they were saying they couldn't believe how big and fast they were. And that's a testament because Heinola was playing with Sami Niku, was going to be leaned on anyways this year.
Yeah.
If Byfuglien's not there, Niku is the pressure is on simply not because he's Niku, but because we need bodies. They need bodies. But Heinola played very well, and he did something that was very un-Paul Maurice-like. He was aggressive at the blue line, which is a change for Jets defensemen. And it'll be really interesting to see if that endears him to Maurice or not. But that was a good thing for the Jets to see that, because without Byfuglien, they're going to be very cautious. And let's just remember about cap space. There's teams who need to offload players right now.
Mm-hmm.
The Canucks do. The Flames do. The Leafs do. There are teams right up on the cap who have to find a way to get compliant. If Byfuglien is not coming back, you actually now have $7.6 million in cap space to work with.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to weaponize that to force your hand to someone else. And
if you want Martin Marincin, you can get him for a song.
What about
TJ Brody?
Yeah, but you don't know when that day is coming. The biggest thing though, Peter, is 2 years ago, I started trumpeting that I felt like Shevardale should have traded him because he was getting long in the tooth to me on the way he was playing, and now they've got no assets. They're not going to have – there's no asset recovery for this.
Yeah. So I wrote a blog about that when Buff was coming up for his deal, and I said it would be better to let him go and try and get Dougie and it was right when Dougie Hamilton and Boston were not – we knew it was over there. I said you should make a play for Hamilton, right side, and you're going younger and stuff. In hindsight right now, I don't think it would have been a bad move. Like I still think it, but as it turned out, it wasn't a bad move for the Jets to keep Byfuglien either, because you really didn't dive on his production much, but you get a better younger player in Hamilton. But
until now, like I thought last year was sort of like the falling off point a little bit for him.
Well,
but at any rate, what you said about Heinola, 2 years ago, I saw him at the Five Nations, and he was a younger guy in that tournament, and he is really good. He's really calm. So I do think he could fill that gap. I still think what will happen. I said this yesterday, Peter. I think the Jets will look at someone like a D'Angelo, somebody who a team is getting a final offer to.
Honka.
Yeah,
Honka.
I would take.
Guys, I got something going on here. Might be interesting. Right back. Okay.
D'Angelo over Honka, but. Anyhow, I would just say the Rangers offered him like $925, $950, and they're done. It's set in stone. They're like sign or don't sign. And at some point, Winnipeg may come calling and say, "Hey, we need somebody in our lineup. Let's get him." And that's what could happen at the end of training camp.
But we all basically agree that this is not going to be a reflexive move where they're going to make a Falk Ristolainen move like right away.
I think that would be calamitous for the Jets to do that. I just don't think it's something where they're going to panic on that. And I'll give you a really good example. The Jets in the lockout season, the Jets were close to being in playoff contention, and Mark Scheifele got injured. No, it was the year. Is it that year? Yeah, I think it was. 13-14 maybe, or 13-14, and they were close. They were hovering around the wild card spot, and they had Scheifele, and it was right up to the trade line. He got injured, and they didn't make a trade to get depth in there because they said that would mean expending assets when we weren't ready to. And I think you have to go back to like how the organization thinks. This isn't a panic move situation. This is. We have to reassess where we are now, and we have to chart a new sort of direction and method to get back to where we want to be. And you don't do that by making a quick trade at the start of the season. That's not going to solve the problem.
On one thing, Peter. They're no longer the leader in their division.
Nope.
And they're probably a wild card team. Like that's probably what's happened here. And now you have to see the biggest thing that we're going to see now is what's Hellebuck going to look like with not as good a defense in front of him.
Yeah.
That's a factor too.
And does this at all affect the situation with Connor and with Laine in terms of the money available and what can happen?
If it becomes available.
If they need that money, they'll just suspend Byfuglien. Like there's nothing they're right now being nice to Dustin Byfuglien. If it becomes a business move because they have to do it because they're going over what they think they were going to have waiting for Byfuglien, they're just going to suspend them. You can't do anything about that.
And you can do that because that's just the business part. And you talk to Buff's agent, you explain what's going on.
Yep.
And that's not a bad faith thing at all.
No.
It's what has to happen. Like the league's going to tell them, you got to figure this out.
Right.
The only difference is, though, unlike Niedermeyer and maybe like Justin Williams, who I think there's a chance he comes back, I really think the minute Byfuglien's away, he's done. Because, again, he's never liked to train to begin with. And he's already been not training great this offseason. This is not the time for him to sort of like say in a month or two, I'm going to come back and then see what kind of shape he's in. Because I can't imagine he'll be in perfect shape.
That's I agree, Russ, is the clock ticks. And if it is a part where maybe he's questioning his ankle and some of his general health, and you're not being able to do things, and you're working with your mind and where your brain is at and how you feel, the harder the worse it goes. I 100% agree.
But look at how that team has changed in 12 months. Your right side was possibly one of the best in the league with Byfuglien, Trouba, and Myers. And now Myers is in Vancouver, Trouba's in New York.
And by the way, Mike, Trouba did answer the critics on can he play a number one. He was playing it fine last night. He got an assist on a great Panarin goal. That's going to happen a lot this year. It is.
Well, I mean, for what he's making, he's got to be a top pairing defenseman.
Yeah.
And he's got to play. And, I think he proved last year that he can carry the offensive load.
He hasn't really been called on to do that because Winnipeg has so many guys.
Yeah,
he didn't have to.
But he has done it before. And he did it in college, and he did it a little bit with the U.S. program. So he'll be doing it again.
Now, Trouba's wanted this. He's wanted this moment.
Yes.
Like, let's not forget. He is wanted to be exactly where he is on a Stanley Cup contender, being the top dog and playing big minutes in that role to be a hero or the villain. He's there. Now it's his point to see if he's got his game in his head to take it to where he believes he should be.
All right, Aki, you're back.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Mike sounded disappointed with that, but oh
well. Yeah, I'm gonna have to bug off at like 1:45. Unfortunately,
that's fine. We'll carry.
But I got to make a call because I am working on something kind of big here. It may have something to do. Well, we'll see. I can't say anything yet, but stay tuned.
Thanks, Zach.
I wish I could give more. I know. I wish I could give more. Can we just? Yeah, I know. Really, sorry, guys. I gotta confirm something. And,
where's the Jersey hook?
Yeah. I know. So,
well, let's talk about the big news. The signing of Thomas Chabot. When we're talking about number one defenseman, he's not by default, but the changeovers in Ottawa left a rather young group. But I think Chabot's fairly established after the 55-point year that he had last year, and the Senators signed him to an 8-year max, $8 million year. Now that puts him ahead of Ekblad. It puts him ahead of Hedman. It puts him behind. I think it puts him at Shea Weber, but behind Doughty as the high end, and Carlson is the highest paid defenseman. This is a great contract. The one thing that I noticed, obviously, he's got a year left on ELC, so this doesn't cost Eugene Melnyk anything extra.
Right.
But it does raise the value of the franchise, and based on the things that have come out in the last couple of days, like him being sued by an Atlantic City casino, and and something I read this morning that his private plane was being held back by the company that was renting it to him because he owed them money. So he's in deep financial straits. Yeah. But this doesn't cost him any money. It's actually a really good deal. But Russ, no signing bonus at all.
Yeah, but he did get a max salary for him, and so that's fine. Again, Pierre Dorian's doing a good job here, man, considering the circumstances especially.
Sure.
Right now, I think Chabot's a top 15 guy in the league, and I think he could be a top 10. So they're paying him exactly right. What Chabot and his agent have figured out is, you know what? Just get paid in the league. You don't know where you're going to be in 3 years, but it doesn't matter because that contract will follow you. And that's really all that matters in this situation. So he's happy. It does raise the franchise value. It does keep players there for this year and maybe beyond. We'll see how it goes there. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in Ottawa, but he is stability for them.
Well, yeah, and he compares reasonably well to Trouba too. I was just sort of looking up, not just from a point production raw totals, but just from some underlying things. He's a little higher on the offensive side, and he's a little lower on the sort of the defensive side of things. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of, Trouba's a little more compact. So it's a nice little comparison there, like in terms of that. You a little more upside, a little more downside on the extremes. Yeah, I really like Chabot a lot. I thought this was kind of a killer signing for Ottawa, to be honest.
It is.
I just think that, like this, it's amazing how he stepped in and became Erik Karlsson for them last year, just, without skipping a beat. And in some ways better because, more healthy than Erik Karlsson, younger, obviously. Still doesn't have all the instincts Karlsson has, obviously. But
and Karlsson still even injured, had a great playoffs.
Yeah, and he's still young, so give him a chance to like develop a lot of Carlson's instincts,
And also, they have Brandstrom behind him, who, I mean, I saw in one preseason game, he looks really good. I think he's going to be, he's going to make that team. They're going to make a lot of mistakes, but and they're not going to be a good team, but I think they have an upside. And they also signed Colin White to the extension too. So it's like, and next year when he's eligible to sign an extension, maybe they get Brady Tkachuk on an 8-year deal. But they've cleared a lot of cap space with some of these moves that they can do this. So it portends well for the future of the Senators.
It's solid. I want to move on to Edmonton, guys, because I only have like 10 minutes, unfortunately. Which sucks but I want to talk about Edmonton because I know you guys want me to talk about Edmonton.
We're doing their team preview, so you can.
We want you to make.
I wanted to go into the preview of the Edmonton preview is what I wanted to get into.
Go ahead.
Because I probably won't be able to do the Florida one. So the 2019-2020 Edmonton Oilers team preview.
Yeah.
Which
I can give you the Cliff Notes version.
Go ahead. Give us the quick Cliff Notes.
The Cliff Notes version is they're not a playoff team and they're going to suck.
All right. Well, let me go a little bit more in depth.
I'm going. That was Cliff Notes version. I'll give you a more extensive version. But go ahead.
Right now, obviously, the biggest change in their offseason was obviously picking up Ken Holland, which is enormous towards their future. It's not going to be an immediate fix for everything that they have, but it's going to take some time. But he's the kind of guy who builds teams that are consistent and can endure. And that's what they need. They need a lot below their top two lines, obviously. I mean, they've got two solid top lines now. I mean, they're still working. Obviously, there's still work to be done. This is not a deep team, but they have two of the best players in the NHL in Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. No questions asked there.
Sure.
And I think the one thing that I think people are missing on them, and the one place I will say that I really feel as if they are getting shortchanged is in the goaltending department, where I know that people are so quick because Koskinen signed that deal that was really just kind of threw everybody and is wow, that's crazy. Why are they signing Mika Koskinen to that deal? And I think that deal kind of messed with him last year after he signed it. And I definitely think, his confidence got shot and he played too many games. And there's a lot of there's a lot of things that went on. But talking to people over there, including Ken Hitchcock, who I really trust a lot when it comes to things like this, he's convinced that Koskinen is going to be huge this year. Like he's convinced that Koskinen is gonna really surprise people, and that he said, "Listen, there's a reason that we signed him to that deal. He is better. You got to see the guy play in practice. You got to see what he can do. You got to see what he's about." Mikko Koskinen is a serious top flight goaltender, and they really believe that. Now, if that happens, that changes everything for Edmonton.
Yeah, but okay. First of all, my critique of the Oilers has nothing to do with Ken Holland because this is not Ken Holland's team.
No, of course not.
He's brought in a couple players to fill in, but you can see, and I'm interested in what Peter and Russ have to say about this, but you can see by the lack of movement that Ken Holland made this summer. He brings in guys like Riley Sheehan and Thomas Yurko, and he added a Russian player on PTO, and re-signed Alex Chason. Nothing big. They got rid of Sekera. They cleared cap space where they could. Peter, they didn't make any moves to improve the team, which means either the improvement's going to come internally by guys like Kaylor.
I can step in, Mike, and say to respond to that for a second. I mean, James Neal is a move to improve the team. I mean, he's better than Milan Lucic.
But he's still a question mark.
Yeah,
he's a question mark. But whenever James Neal has played with skilled players, he's put up goals. I mean, he's going to score goals. He's going to score way more than Milan Lucic scored.
Yeah, he played with skilled players in Calgary last year, and he was terrible. That was
but he played a lot of third line minutes in Calgary.
But he also couldn't skate with that team. That was his big issue.
Right. I mean, that was
skate act.
I know, but but remember, he had a killer year with probably one of the fastest teams we've ever seen in the Vegas Knights, just 2 years ago.
And I got to be fair about Mikko Koskinen. He is an unproven NHL goalie. He has one season of NHL experience at the age of 30 last year, and now he's 31.
And he had one good month for them, and they signed him to a 3-year extension for $4.5 million.
He has no track record with me yet. He has to prove it.
And that's really
he doesn't have a track record, but that's why I'm going off of what I'm being told by a coach who I really trust to see him play.
I was just saying, that's really the issue here with the Oilers is, Holland's made a couple little things. he needs a situation where players come through their system and take a step.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for Ken Holland, he has to see if anyone sees that. And I bet you behind the scenes between him and Tippett, there has been some talk about what are we going to look for? What do we need to see? How are we going to measure it? And then once we know what that is, then I can start making changes. Because if you're making changes off of Peter Chiarelli's mistakes or whatever it is, you're reacting to something that you have seen externally.
Yeah.
There's more to the Edmonton Oilers than just dysfunction on the ice. You got to understand why everything has been broken in the way it was, right? And if Ken Holland believes in what he's done over his career, then he's going to take a little bit of time to make sure it's not just gutting things in the summer and hoping it works.
Right.
You've got to learn a little bit.
Yeah,
and he's got to learn about what he's inherited and give opportunities to get out of that, because otherwise it's a messy, expensive process. And that might be the last option, but he's probably got to prove to Daryl Cates that that's the only option first.
The hope for Edmonton right now is Kaylor Yamamoto making progress, Evan Bouchard maybe making the NHL at some point this year.
He's making the NHL this year, Mike.
Okay, so if he's making it, then then the development of Evan Bouchard.
I've heard 50-50 on that one.
But basically, take into consideration the guys who you consider the core group of that team doing what they did last year. McDavid's the best in the league. Draisaitl's a 50-goal scorer. Nugent Hopkins is a good forward. You got guys like Clefbaum on defense, Darnell Nurse. Those guys, if they perform as they did last year, that's fine. The problem is the rest of the team, the 18 other players.
Yeah,
there's not much there.
There's no depth on this team. I mean, maybe Bertasov makes the team and has a Lucic kind of year of what Lucic used to be. That's possible. I don't know.
Very high on Tyler Benson as well. Like who is the guy?
Benson's not going to make the team out of the gate. I don't even hear his name being talked about.
I'm
happy he did.
And then there's the whole
RV
situation, right?
I would be happy if he did. Trust me. But I still look at this team, and there's still too many holes. Even with these other players they brought in, and we don't even know if Connor McDavid will start the season on time.
Look, I'm not sold on what Edmonton's going to do, because we know they have a lot of things to fix. But I think before let's remember Puljujärvi. I think before Ken Holland addresses that issue of whether we're going to whether they're going to keep him or trade him or whatever, he needs to see what's going on the ice in meaningful games and in probably a 10 to 15 game window. And then I think he can probably deal with maybe some of the inquiries he's had, because his guys have been calling him up,
right?
Like there's no question, right? And there's some obvious holes to fill. He's got to find the right ones, but he needs to understand them for himself, not from what happened last year, but from what's happening this year.
Yeah, and the thing is, though, I don't think he's going to get that opportunity, because I don't think he'll play a game for Edmonton. He'll keep playing in the Finnish league, and they'll probably have to trade him based on what he has done so far, which is not a lot. So you probably
not a lot, but it's also someone who is a significant prospect.
Yeah.
Sure.
Hasn't sullied his reputation yet.
Right.
And really, if you're someone behind the scenes in the NHL, can you kind of you're probably sitting there going, I don't wish the guy would be so public about it, but can you blame him? You're probably going, Edmonton's a train wreck. Guys don't want to sign there.
Yeah.
You know the undercurrent of what's being said. So, you're not going to hold it against them necessarily. So yes, and your job is to get the best players at the cheapest price, whatever that is. And this is an opportunity. You probably won't pull the wool over Ken Holland's eyes, but he's got to know what he's got to get in return and where that's going to come. And that's going to be in consultation with Tippett and finding out, because the holes of last year, it's like your golf game. You may go and start off in the spring and you got this problem, but where you finished last year, that problem didn't exist. And that's what Ken Holland's got to figure out. Where are the problems this year? Once we're playing meaningful games, then I know what I need to acquire.
I mean, I looked at the Pacific Division, and I have Edmonton finishing only ahead of Anaheim and Los Angeles. I think they're sixth in that division. They have almost no chance of finishing in the top three, and they're not going to be a playoff team.
I'm going to give a couple Tippett quotes.
Okay.
So he did say that he felt like Bouchard's got ice in his veins, and so I think that one's pretty safe. Now, what he said about Benson is a smart role player. And so just like I thought, if he is going to make the team, he's going to make it as a winger. But
Yeah,
you're not talking about a guy who's going to have a large impact if he's a role player. So you're just talking about basically another mucker in the lineup.
What about Joakim Nygard, the guy they picked up from Sweden?
Now, I don't know a lot about him, so maybe
he's pretty highly touted. You know, he's been playing on the second line in preseason a little bit. I mean, again, these are guys that, you know, this is when Holland picks up a guy from Sweden, you have to think, okay, maybe he's got something going on there. Right? He knows he's got his sources in Sweden, as we know. Like, he's got his connections over there. That was interesting to me. I mean, I think
they're one injury away from just, you know, not being a good team too, because they're barely fielding a team here.
Yeah, no, I listen. I mean, I think that people forget how close they were to the playoffs last year. In my opinion, they have improved. No, they really. I mean, they stayed in the playoff race very late.
But they were never within 8 points in the last 2 months. They really weren't in the playoff race.
It's arguable. That's fine. I'm all right with that.
Anyway, I mean, I just think Tippett. We've seen what Tippett can get out of teams. You know, we've seen what Tippett got out of Phoenix. You know, when he got out of Arizona. You know, he managed to get a lot out of a very, very little bit in those situations. They were always competitive. They were always a playoff team. They were always battling. They were always not always a playoff team, but they were always right on the edge. This team has way more talent than any of those Tippett teams that he took to the playoffs in Arizona. There's just, I'm not saying they're a guaranteed playoff team, and I'm not willing to pick where I'm going to put them yet, but I'm just saying that they are definitely in the race. They are not going to be, and they could be in the race they could dart out to a pretty big beginning. That's my opinion on them. But I do have to go, guys. I'm really, really sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Right.
Thanks, Zach. So we'll agree to disagree on Edmonton. Just to finish off Edmonton, Peter, do you think they're a playoff team or a non-playoff team?
I don't think they're a playoff team.
Russ?
Nope.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. I mean, it's tough to pick against a team that has the league's best player. I'm a little concerned. Like I said yesterday, if I'm Edmonton, if there's any question about McDavid's knee, sit him the first month. You're not making the playoffs. He is your future. Make sure he's 100% healthy. Make sure, because that guy starts having Bobby Orr problems with his knee. I know technology is a lot better now, and knee injuries can be solved with surgery, unlike the way it was back in the 60s and 70s. But he's a superstar player, and he's your only hope going forward. So if you need to rest him another 4 weeks, rest him another 4 weeks. You know, but I don't think that there's enough there with the Edmonton Oilers to challenge for a playoff spot. And I don't think
there's no depth, and I can't be sold on Mikko Koskinen. You can't sell me on him.
And if Mikko Koskinen is the Mikko Koskinen after the contract, which he was a sub 500 goalie with an under 900 save percentage, is a 37-year-old Mike Smith going to save your bacon? Not a frickin' chance.
But again, Koskinen's 31. He was a 30-year-old rookie in essence because he only played a few NHL games and a short AHL career. So it's like, what are we talking about here?
Yeah.
Look, this is one of those Peter Chiarelli moves that reminds me of Mad Mike Milbury. And you know, Ken Holland did the best he could. And again, you know, if you're Ken Holland and you're taking that job, you're telling the Oilers leadership group and the owner that I'm going to need time to understand not only what I have to fix, but how to fix it. And the holes you had last year, I know I'm a broken record here, may not be the same ones you see now. Because what if Koskinen does play to league average and he's a 9-12 goalie? Does it require urgency, or can you put that effort and resources into other areas? Because if he averages out to a 9-12 goalie, you can probably hover along with that. Right? Like that's, you know, if he's a 908 goalie, if he's Andre Pavelec, no, you're going to have to correct it. But you need to see what you've got, and you need to see what you've got under Dave Tippett.
And here's a clue of what is going on in Edmonton right now. I'm just going to read you off 10 names quickly: Sam Gagner, Zach Kassian, Marcus Granlund, Kyle Brodziak, Josh Archibald, Joakim Nygaard, Riley Sheehan, Thomas Yurko, Brandon Manning, and Mike Smith. What do they all have in common? All of them are unrestricted free agents after this year. That's 10 players.
We did say this about the Islanders, and they brought in Trotz, and he did great things. I get it. But even Trotz had more to work with than this.
Yeah, my point is that by osmosis, by attrition, Holland is going to change that roster after this year. He's probably going to try to trade some players if he can find some sucker to take Chris Russell. Maybe he does that with another year left in his contract. Adam Larson's only got another year left in his contract. He's got to, they only signed Darnell Nurse for a year, so they need to sign him to an extension. So, I mean, there's a lot of maneuvering that's going to happen after this year.
If I flip it around and say, hey, if Mikko Koskinen were an Islander, which he was drafted by them, Gart Snow drafted him. If he were an Islander on last year's Islanders team and Leonard wasn't there, would we be talking about the Islanders making the playoffs last year like they did in their first year? I don't think so, because people want to forget that Leonard had an amazing year.
Right.
So I can't see Koskinen having an amazing year, and that's what it would take.
And the comments in the chat are correct. Brodziak is he's got an injury. He will never play again, but he's got another year in his contract. So that's somebody who they're paying and somebody who will clear after this year. Now, as opposed to I think the negative direction of the Edmonton Oilers, there's a reason for positivity when it comes to the Florida Panthers, because they finally, Roberto Luongo was a great goaltender, but in the last few years, the injuries piled up. He couldn't stay healthy. He was 40 years old. James Reimer was a pathetic plan B situation for them. He might barely just be an NHL goaltender right now. We'll see in Carolina, but they go out and they get Bobrovsky, and Russ, and they added a couple other free agents as well in Connolly and Achari. This is a team that I think is in a position now with Quenneville there that they're going to challenge for one of the top 3 spots in the Atlantic.
Well, we already saw pictures of Quenneville, on one of the goals. He was mad. There'll be a lot more emotion behind that bench this year. That will help. There's 2 players that I watched intently for the 10 minutes I watched, which I'm not trying to be a wise guy. It's preseason. That's just,
Sure.
At the game, that's what you get out of me for each game is a good 10 minutes or a period and a half. What I did see was Aaron Ekblad looking really good. Good on the power play, good in general, passing the puck well. And what I saw and I see every year, and again, just kind of gets overlooked because he scores 30 goals every year, is Mike Hoffman scoring again. And so those things are going to be constant. And it's good that they didn't trade Mike Hoffman because we heard these rumors. So they're a good team. That's a team now where if the Bruins stumble out of the gate or somebody else stumbles out of the gate, they could take their spot this year. That's how good they could be. Will they be that good? I don't know, but they could be.
Now, Peter, they did add Anton Stralman in free agency on defense, and I was a little questioning on that signing because Stralman started to show his age last year. At times, I think he was scratched later in the season. I don't know if it was injury related or they just didn't think he was up to it anymore. And he gets a 3-year deal at $5.5 million. You've got that defensive core. It's Matheson, it's Ekblad, it's Yandel, and now it's Stralman in the top 4. I don't know whether that was something that Quenneville wanted, because how Quenneville likes certain defensemen, and maybe that's a guy he likes. But what do you think of the Panthers?
They're the team that you wonder about what's going to happen. It could be spectacular or it could be what the hell? There's no way of really knowing what's going on with them until we start seeing stuff. You get the boost of having Bobrovsky in net. Sorry, something printing beside me here. And you go, okay, that could be a total game changer because they've had unstable goaltending for a while. Then you add Quenneville in behind the bench. Is that going to solidify some things and make them work a little, make the team work a little better? And then their core players, there's potential for some really good things to happen. It's just a matter of figuring out, seeing if it does. I play, if the Panthers are going to make I put a 50-50 on it of whether they make the postseason or not. They could, and they could do it really well. It's just hard to know. It might take another year. It might take another roster tweak or something.
Yeah, I will tell you this too. They had maybe the most underrated player in the league in Dadonov because he looked spectacular, and he had 65 points 2 years ago, 70 last year, 28 goals both years, and you got to believe Quenneville will probably get a little more out of him. So that's not counting Huberdeau. That's not counting Barkov. I think those guys finally have the support of a system in place that makes them look like a playoff team.
And the difference could be between making and missing the playoffs, how youngsters like Owen Tippett, if he makes the team.
He looked pretty good last night. I don't know what you saw of him, Mike, but
or Borgstrom. Those are two guys that are really key for them.
Yeah, I think Borgstrom, he played last year, and I think that year of experience will help him, and I think he'll contribute with some goals for sure. Tippett was playing some good physical play, and I think because he has such a great shot, if he's not scoring, he does need to provide something else, and I think he can provide a physical element, and he was playing pretty good on the wall. So maybe he will make that team. If not, he's really close. So, they're looking pretty good. They are.
A couple notes here, and then we'll take some questions in the chat. Jerry Johansson, who's the agent for Braden Point, appeared on Sportsnet 650 radio in Vancouver. And according to the contract talks with Tampa, he says, we're a ways apart right now. We're not that close, frankly.
Yeah.
Peter, the thing with Point is they don't have a lot of cap space, and they're looking for the bridge. They're sort of forcing him into the bridge deal because they don't have the cap space.
Yeah.
And
it's the whole Brock Besser thing all over again.
Right.
And you wonder if it's going to turn out as well. And I think for Tampa, the challenge is they don't need to necessarily, they don't want to have the same situation as Besser, because that qualifying offer is going to be massive, and they're going to have to know how they accommodate that when it comes. Right. I think the Canucks can figure out a way to do it because Eriksson will be off the books. It's just going to cost them way more than they should have to pay, because they could have locked him up had they not done some of the deals they did this summer. Tampa is going to want to avoid that. I think Brisebois understands that, but Point's seen the other deals. He's going to sit there and go, why should I be taking less on my bridge or any kind of structured thing if these guys are getting the same thing and I'm better?
I'll tell you what.
Go ahead.
If they could survive without him. And that's what Braden Point's going to find out, and his agent's going to find out when the season starts. They've got enough players to shuffle around that if you didn't know Braden Point was on the team, you might not miss him.
But Russ, isn't it a similar situation to Toronto last year with Nylander, in the sense that when it comes to December 1st and it comes to succumbing to Braden Point and having him for a Stanley Cup run or not signing him, the Leafs buckled and said, we don't want Nylander not being here to be the reason we don't win a cup. And that might be the same thing with Brisebois does.
They had a fairly new GM, and even though Brisebois is a fairly new GM, he's not new to that organization.
Right.
And I think the difference here is Kucherov signed a bridge deal.
Yeah, for less than 5, and that was 3 years ago. But if he
all he has to do is say to this kid, listen, I get where you're at. I was there too. I signed the bridge deal, and look at the deal I got. Get into camp. And that's exactly what I would tell him. No bones about it.
Now, Johansson, I'm assuming from this report, he is also the agent for Milan Lucic, and he told Sportsnet 650 there was a chance that Lucic, and I bring this up because I'm sure this will entertain you, Peter, there was a chance that Milan Lucic could have been a Canuck this season.
Oh, my God.
But the conversations with the team were had, and Lucic was into it, but it didn't end up happening. On top of the stupidity of them signing guys like Roussel and who is not? It's not Troy Brower. Who's the? Hold on a second. I'm just drawing a blank here on the. Where is it? $3 million. Jay Beagle. Thank you, Jay Beagle. Yeah, if they would have added Lucic, instead of Benning getting an extension, he probably should have been fired.
Yeah. I follow a lot of Canucks Twitter, and it's honestly like, if you're not a Canucks fan, but you want to just have entertainment, it's not about the weird things that Leafs Twitter is. It's not about some of the venom that comes out there. It's not the same sort of longevity passion of Montreal fans. It's not sort of the hilariousness of integrating gritty into your fan base. Canucks Twitter is just wild. It's super creative. It's super funny. And the stuff that comes out about Benning and how this all unfolded is just unbelievable. And having Milan Lucic on that team is just, it goes right back to the Benning playbook, which is just slightly, it's in the Chiarelli zone. Hey, might as well bring some guys we knew and had success with 8 years ago.
But
Bring them in because they're good guys and I know them and I understand them. Like,
can we be fair about this to Jim Benning? This is just talk. That's all this is. He wasn't even close to a contract with him or making a deal or whatever. This is just talk from an agent. I can't put a lot of stock in it. I can't.
And if you think about it, Peter, it more than likely would have been a similar type of deal to the deal that they made with Calgary. Probably would have been Eriksson for Lucci.
Yeah. It's just swapping dollars, right?
Right.
Yes.
And then if it was Eriksson for Lucci, I actually think Vancouver fans probably would have liked it because at least they know that Lucic would go out and hit somebody, whereas Eriksson is completely ineffective.
You know what? Here's the thing. Like, Lucic couldn't keep up with McDavid. Like, that was it. But and McDavid is a speed merchant, incredibly talented, but he's almost unstoppable once he gets to stride.
Right.
That Lucic riding with Pettersson could have been a little different and maybe a little more value than care. And that's why it might have been palatable a little bit if Eriksson went out. You're changing things and Lucic will go out there and beat the snot out of someone who touches the alien, right? Yeah. Not that I agree with that. I don't think you should be having players who do that, but it still exists.
Is that his nickname, the alien?
Particularly if Edmonton could have retained a little more salary on it or something to equal out because Eriksson's only got 3. Like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
There's probably a little more upside to it for Vancouver if they make the deal, but the comedy, had they done it, would have been just pure brilliance. Like, that's for sure.
Is that the nickname for Pettersson, is the alien?
The alien.
Okay.
I know that. Okay.
So obviously he was on that thing that Russ saw that the U.S. Navy released, the picture.
Yeah.
It does look like the bat plane. Okay, a couple little notes here, and we'll take the questions. Brian Little confirms that he talked to Patrick Laine. They texted and spoke on the phone for a couple minutes. Laine apologized for what he said in the Finnish newspaper, and Little added they talked about other things besides hockey. Paul Maurice was asked about Andrew Kopp's offense, whether he was making a good case for a bigger role this year. And he said, did he tell you that he wants to play with our best players?
Yeah.
Can I say something, though, about this? This is Patrick Laine to Brian Little that, yes, he apologizes for those statements. That's after Brian Little said, why did you do it? And can I tell everybody you don't mean it? And he probably said, yeah, go ahead. It couldn't be more disingenuous. I'm sorry, but let Patrick Laine say it himself without an agent. He doesn't need to go through a friend on a phone call to then go to a media person and tell him that. It's a little too set up for me.
Right.
It could very well have played out like that. One of the interesting things is Paul Maurice went around and went and visited Laine in Finland this summer. He visited with other players. Blake Wheeler talked about it in a media scrum before the first preseason game that he had a lot of chats and Snapchats and fun stuff with Laine over the summer. Whatever is going on here, it's speaking a little bit to the old playbook that Trouba used in 2016, right? Want to play with the best players, want my chance to shine, blah, blah, blah. I think it really comes down to pay me my money. I've scored 115 goals. I'm an elite category in NHL history in the modern game or in the modern era. Don't try and shortchange me and stuff like this. And I think behind the scenes, you can say that to the players and the players all understand. And you say, I'm trying to make this about my position on the team. The interesting thing was when Trouba pulled that, Matthew Perreault had some very strong comments about him. about what he was doing. And we haven't heard from Perreault about Laine or Connor yet. And that's the interesting thing. The other interesting is no one's heard from Connor. Like, is the guy in the witness protection program? Where's his agent? Like, nothing. And so the rumor here right now is that Connor has a deal signed, but they want to announce both. That's the rumor.
Okay.
But I don't understand why you wouldn't, if you had a deal signed, why you'd just be, it doesn't make sense. It's so good. I agree.
Right.
Because here's the thing, you wouldn't, for one thing, somebody would be tracking him and he'd be leaving Bern and he'd be on his way, right?
Yeah.
We heard that.
Right. All right. There's some questions. We'll end right at 2:00 here. So we got 3 or 4 minutes to answer some questions. Funky Cold Zadina.
Always first, Mike.
With his daily question, will Brandstrom make the Sens roster opening night? If I had to guess, I would say yes.
Yes.
Peter, take care.
Yeah, I think so. He should.
Mark Peterson asks, what role do you think Brett Conley plays on the Panthers this year? I think he plays the same role that he played with the Capitals last year. He's a third-line winger. He'll give you 15 to 20 goals. Yep. That's what they signed him for. That's what they want, depth of scoring.
Quenneville will love him.
Yeah. Let's see here. Terry's GGG. With the Jet situation, is Carolina the perfect trade partner to acquire another defenseman if Byfuglien is done? Well, they have an excess of defensemen, but again, I don't think that there's going to be any trade until
the deadline. They have to figure out, just on that Winnipeg team, and I'll tell you what, this affected my fantasy draft. I made sure I took Josh Morrissey in it because he could be their number one guy now.
Oh, he is. He is the number one guy. Even if Byfuglien comes back, he's the number one guy.
Right.
And Morrissey had a very good game last night. He's making some good passes. You dive in on Morrissey, that's for sure.
Yeah,
and Pionk
advice there.
And Pionk will be the point guy in the power play.
No, it'll be Morrissey.
It'll be Morrissey. Okay.
Yeah, Morrissey will be there.
Morrissey, and I mean, I don't know about Pionk, but it might be Niku.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see that. See,
more Niku can pass. Niku made a cross ice behind the blue top of the circle, off the wall pass across the ice to Kopp on the blue line that set up the first goal last night. It was almost blind. It was unreal. Like, he can move the puck.
Has Stanley played at all?
Yeah, he didn't look good in Edmonton. Okay. His reads were off, Russ, and I don't know. Like, that's like,
that made
he wasn't adjusting the way he should have. It was just a weird thing.
Yeah, well, some of the Leaf defensemen fighting for the bottom pairing there. Boy, I think the young guys look better than the veterans. Guys like Ben Harper got walked around by Connor Brown. Martin Marincin is Martin Marincin, and Justin Hall will not have a problem clearing waivers if he keeps playing like he played. Michael Rankin asks, will Thomas Hertl or Timo Meier replace the offense that Pavelski provided for the Sharks, or are they betting on Burns and Carlson?
No, I think all of them will have all of the same offense. I mean, Hertl had an amazing year. I think LeBanc will give them more offense.
Sorensen? Sorensen, too?
Sorensen a little bit. He's not so offensive, but LeBanc can certainly add more points than he has.
Okay. One more question here. I'm just going through. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, maybe not. Let's see. No. Okay. Well, we're done.
Very weak effort, chat room.
No. We're just under time constraints. That's all.
I know.
Okay. All right. Good show, guys. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. We'll let you know of the time because I will be heading up to Toronto for the Sabres Leafs preseason soiree. But we'll let you know. For Peter Tessier, for Russ Cohen, for Eklund, and I am Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.